Welcome back to the J Agenda. I think that this is, according to my rudimentary math skills, probably J Agenda number 12. I could be wrong, and if I am willing to be corrected. Listen, before we get going, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. I really appreciate it. That's going to further the channel, although I am under no illusions that this channel is going to go viral. And if it does, okay, so be it. But speaking of being corrected, that brings me to the first item on the agenda today, which is I've entitled that, the toleration of criticism. Now, I bring this up in the context of recent events where a notable right-wing influencer was murdered, and anyone who didn't get on board and feel as empathetic or sympathetic about it as maybe his followers did were considered pariahs, if you will. And this person's influence and what he said could not be, in the eyes of his followers, could not really be criticized. Certainly not at a time like this. Recently, our featherweight snowflake president, who, by the way, his mental faculties are slipping, man. That's an issue for another day. But now we compound the chronic lying now on top of mental decline. Oh, anyway, back to what I was talking about. So yeah, we got a president who got a little butthurt about some funny criticism. Specifically from Jimmy Kimmel, but hey, Trump's video's out there. You can see it for yourself. And we're seeing the pro-genocide, pro-Zionist side beginning to circle the wagons and try to cancel those who speak up against the certain genocide against the Palestinian people committed by the IDF, committed by the Zionist forces in Israel and in that region, as well as assisted by the United States government and military itself. And I find this intolerance to criticism to be concerning to me because it's we don't advance. We can't get through to the core of the issues if people want to just shut down their critics or cast aspersions upon them, or the ad hominem attacks, or otherwise work to shut them down. If you believe that your position is a correct one, why then would you even want or think about imposing censorship or silencing the opposition? If you're absolutely sure of it, and there's absolutely no chink in that logical armor, right, in your position, if you know that it's infallible, why would even criticism bother you? But apparently there are those who are intolerant of criticism, are probably afraid that there are too many flaws in it and they don't want to be exposed. But opposing views can help your position. If you're committed to pursuing the truth of your position, if you're committed to establishing the veracity of your position, then you should also be committed to accepting criticism of your position. Man, as a Marxist-Leninist, I get that all the time. But I can, sometimes I can see where they're coming from. Other times I can just refute it. And usually when I push back a little bit, that's when they start calling me names and get mad and that kind of thing. But why should you be committed to criticism of your position? Because if there are biases in there that you haven't thought about, or if there's flaws in your argument that you hadn't considered, or there's errors, mistakes in your position, then criticism is going to help you rethink, refine, and improve your position if you really want to improve your position. If you shut down or shut out criticism of your position, then you're likely holding a position that can't really be defended successfully, or it's a position that's misleading you, or it's a position that you're not completely sure about, but it's a hill you figure you should die on, or it's a position that is misinforming you. Allow criticism to be a force of correction to improve your position. If your position, right, if there's aspects of it that just somebody shoots holes in and you know it, well, abandon that position. Abandon it. Why hold on to it? Right? Go rethink it, unless that hurts too much. If you want to move closer to the truth, then you're going to have to admit that your ideas could have some flaws, and that you should be willing to use criticism as a means to purify and refine those ideas in your position. Look, I'm going to leave you this section of the agenda with this analogy. Years ago, I worked as a machinist, and I worked at a place where we would manufacture the parts for the machinery on the production side of the company. It was, I had bittersweet feelings about it. I learned a lot, but it was hot and dirty, which I don't like anymore. But in the process of making tool steel even stronger to work with, both in terms of making the component and its durability, we would use a process called annealing. That's ANNEALING. Sure, he's got an English degree. But in that process, we would superheat the metal to the point that it would glow, almost translucent. It would get white hot. And through our goggles, we could even see bubbles of impurities begin to form and come out toward the surface, where eventually they would flake off. And when we saw that the annealing process had gone as far as it could do, of course, we would take the heat off, and it would literally take hours for that steel to cool before we could work with it. But the point that I'm making here is that the heat on that tool steel, even though tool steel is very strong, right? It's very dense. In and of itself, the heat could serve as an analogy for the criticism of an argument. Let that heat take its toll, or have its effect, if you will, on your argument. And then sit down and say, okay, what's the merits of this? What is true? What isn't true? What do I need to process? What do I need to change? Rather than just wanting to cancel people, or shut them out, or shut down the argument by ad hominem childish attacks on somebody, name calling, or just one of the things that I find amusing, not amusing, is when somebody is completely unable to answer criticism with a laughing emoji, because they think that they see your criticism as absurd, and they just dismiss it with a laughing emoji. And I think, well, there's no point carrying on with those people. They've chosen their path, where they think everything outside of their own belief is absurd. There's no reasoning with those people. Why should I even try? So open yourself up to criticism. Will you be a bit more tolerant of it? I'm talking to everybody on the entire political spectrum. If you're on the right and you're butthurt about what you perceive some perceived leftist is saying, or you're on the left and somebody on the right is calling, your allies names or whatever, you know what? Think about it. Just don't, react emotionally. Jesus, Murphy. So that closes that issue of the agenda. I want to move on to the next thing. So the next thing I want to talk about on our agenda, there we go, is the concept or the idea, the action, the activity, the activism of a general strike. And this is going to be, this is going to show up again on the next few installments of the J Agenda, because I really want to be thorough without being tedious about this. So I want to go into what it is, why it should be organized, how it could be carried out. I want to talk about the history of general or social strikes and their effectiveness, and they are effective. They have been effective in the past. Then I want to talk about knowing our adversaries, because if we were to go on general strike as en masse, there are people who would not want us to do that and would do what they could do to disrupt that. And then we'll talk about preparing for a general strike, and then maybe together with that, when a general strike should and is ready to occur. So I want to start with part one of a general strike with what a general strike is. Now, a general strike is the withdrawal of our cooperation, that is the workers' cooperation, with the present political economy, and with the withholding of our labor, withholding of our production, and the withholding of what remains of our money. Mahatma Gandhi said that even the most powerful cannot rule without the cooperation of the ruled. So if we together undertake a general strike where we decide we're not going to work, we're not going to produce, we're not going to spend for however long, the ruling class will quickly understand where the power lies. And, as I'll mention again in a little bit, we also begin to feel our power. We also begin to understand and say, hey, wait a minute, we are in charge. The masses are in charge. And when that happens, the game is over for the dictatorship of the oligarchs who presently subjugate us. Now, I'd like to suggest that the characteristic of this strike would be of the sort that we all stay home instead of walking picket lines or out in the taking back the streets. Why? Because if we're home not doing anything, not working, and we're not on the streets, then the authorities, the authorities under the control of the system, cannot repress us. In other words, they can't hit us in the head with clubs. They can't throw us in jail. They can't incite riots, through agents provocateurs, that kind of thing. They can't gin it up. It will be what it will be, and we will be in control of it. Right? So we're not going to put ourselves in harm's way as much as we can when we do this. Why should it be organized, and how should it be carried out? Well, the reason it should be organized is that it is the effective, nonviolent way to bring about change in our system. There's nothing violent about us staying at home and not working, not going to work for a few days. There's nothing inherently violent about us not buying anything. There's nothing nonviolent about us not producing anything. If everyone just stops and stays home after, of course, we prepare for this systemic shutdown, there is no way that the police or the military forces can repress that action. When we strike, when we stop, we don't picket. We just don't show up. And this almost completely removes the tool of repression by force. Why do we put together and act on a general strike? Well, it's becoming more and more clear to more and more of us that really is the power that we have. One of the only remaining powers that we have. And it's very effective because the representative legislative system in the United States is entirely co-opted by the dictating oligarch class. We need no further evidence of that than to look at the oligarchs and their lobbying, political action committees, contributions and gifts to the campaigns of the members of Congress or influential spokesmen, hear me TPUSA, who have the ear of millions of people. The system represents the interests of the dictating oligarchs. It is delusional to continue to believe that without force, in this case I mean economic force, that the ruling oligarchs are just going to throw up their hands and say, okay, workers, okay, masses, we're done. Here, the power is all yours. You go ahead and rule yourselves, and by the way, rule us too. That's not going to happen. And so we just have to stop thinking in terms that a representative republic actually works for the masses of the people, because it no longer does, if it ever did. And resistance to the oligarchic system, to the oligarchic dictatorship, is not going to be found. It is not found in the institutions of the U.S. government. The institutions support this dictatorship. So we have to disabuse ourselves of the idea that voting or traditional ineffective peaceful demonstrations are going to change the systemic conditions that are promoting social, political, and economic degeneration to the enrichment of the economic class of rulers who are squeezing the quality of life out of us and are extracting the treasure out of us. We have one thing that the ruling class needs us for, and that's our labor. That's our production. Right? So if we withhold our labor, if we withhold our production, if we deny them that one thing that they need us for, then that is a huge step forward so that we can begin to establish our authority over the system under the threat of even more strikes. At least in the beginning, such actions are probably not going to accomplish everything that we need to do in order to rebuild an entirely new socioeconomic system, a managed economy, full employment, housing, and medical care for all. But it will demonstrate to ourselves as workers, and it will certainly demonstrate to them, that the real power in society and over the economy is in our hands. So we use a general strike as a means to match up our real power with political power and our ability, and we have the ability for self-governance without exploitation of man by man. So in the next video, I'm going to go into the history of these strikes to take a look at some of the social strikes or general strikes that have occurred in the past and see how effective they really were. And they were effective, and they will be if we just have the intention, we just have the organization, we have the commitment and the covenant with each other to unify and to make it happen. Well, that brings me to the end of the agenda. Any questions? If you have some, put them in the box, and we'll get them on the table. We'll bring them out. Again, I appreciate you watching. I'm honored that you took time out of your lifetime that you'll never get back again, that you spent it right here watching this and listening to what I had to say. I'm humbled and I'm honored by that. So I will see you next time on the next J Agenda. You guys take care of yourselves, please.